good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. So excited to be having another webinar on EPR essentials, kind of navigating these regulations as they pop up throughout the US. Before we get into the details though, wanted to give a little bit of background. I'll say hello, I'm Preston. I am on our business development team at 3R and I'm also a sustainability consultant. 3R is a full service sustainability solutions firm that offers consulting services in a variety of different service areas across many industries. We're industry agnostic and we support all sorts of companies from really small to really large multinational public companies. A lot of the work we do focuses on customer requests like EcoVadis and CDP, also sustainability reporting and work in the climate space, either to manage or measure greenhouse gases or align with some regulatory frameworks that are coming online. We also have a products and packaging sustainability team, which will be most of our focus today during the webinar. And then I'd be missed to shout out our sister company, Sustainability Assurance Services, which offers third-party data validation and assurance of sustainability-related data, which is a bit relevant today as well. So that's about 3R. We do these complimentary webinars fairly often. Here's our upcoming ones for April. We have these drop-in or Ask Me Anything sessions, which can be really useful if you're having requests around EcoVadis or SBTI, Science-Based Targets Initiative. These are opportunities to just drop in and ask your questions and learn from peers. They're really casual and kind of focus on community building, which I always appreciate. If any of you guys are kind of sustainability professionals, you know it can be a lonely road out there trying to advocate for your efforts, and these drop-in support hours allow you to ask your questions that are kind of not Googleable and also connect with peers that are in the same world. So if you've registered today, you'll be added to our newsletter, which will give you the information for registering for these, but otherwise they're on our website and on these QR codes. All right, so today we have the pleasure of speaking with Fraser. She leads our product and packaging team here at 3R and also works a lot in our supplier engagement programming. I'll let her introduce herself, but wanted to kind of do a quick intro and give you guys the background information for today.
Thanks, Preston. Usually we have some more people joining or presenting to you, but today I get to have this stage to talk about a space that I'm really passionate about, which is packaging, and just due to the fact that it's such a visceral experience of waste in our day-to-day lives. And I really believe extended producer responsibility is an exciting opportunity where regulation is really helping to drive change and reduce that waste and improve the circularity of packaging and packaging supply chains. So excited to dive into all of that today. As Preston said, I lead our product and packaging service line at 3R, as well as a lot of our supply chain work. And I am based in Portland, Oregon. So with that, we'll dive right in. As Preston mentioned, this is a touch on EPR kind of holistically. We'll do a light touch on, again, just introducing this as a concept and its impact, touching on what's new as of April 2026 versus when we last gave an EPR webinar, which was last July 2025. So some highlights there. We also wanted to give some guidance as to how to comply with EPR, and then dive into some challenges that we've seen with clients that we've worked with to support them with EPR and recommendations for you. Okay. So we want to start with a poll. Preston, I'll let you lead that.
Launched.
So first, the first question is, there's a lot of confusion often about if you're in scope as an obligated producer or not. So we wanted to get a pulse on our audience today as to whether that's clear for you.
Great. Thanks for those of you who are participating. Seems like a lot of people are not sure. Some are sure. And while I'm here, I realized I forgot to mention that we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So on the top right hand of your screen, there's a little question mark box, and you can use that to ask questions throughout. And at the end, we'll have time for some Q&A. So definitely take advantage of the resources we have here. And maybe this question starts your own questioning. Are you clear? And what questions do you have around whether or not you're an obligated producer?
Yeah.
We've got about half of you voting. We'll give it a little longer.
And typical, we really do see this. Some companies are pretty confident because it's very obvious that you're putting packaging into the market of EPR states, but others who may be suppliers of parts of products, et cetera, or packaging suppliers themselves, and wondering whether you're in scope too. So, and we can dive a bit deeper into this in this presentation, but really, really a typical and normal response about not having full clarity yet in these first years of EPR for packaging.
I'm going to share an end. We got about 50-50. So half folks saying they are clear and half saying they are not. I think that makes sense. It's a bit confusing, and we're here to hopefully give you some clarity today. I'm going to hop off, but I'll come back when there's a next poll.
Thanks, Preston. We'll hop to the next slide. And so to help you with that, if you did vote no, but you're not sure, we would love to offer you some of our time as a complimentary offer from 3R to have a conversation and learn a little bit more about your business and help you understand some of the thresholds that will tell you and guide you as to whether you're an obligated producer or not. So you can use this QR code to register for a complimentary conversation with us. We'd love to meet with you and again, give you some guidance. Do have to asterisk that with, we are not a law firm, so we can't give you a final determination, but can absolutely give you some direction about whether you're likely an obligated producer or not. We'll just hold on this slide for a little bit just to make sure you have time to click that QR code if you'd like to sign up. Okay. We'll have an opportunity at the end too. And you can always just email us at 3R as well for a conversation. Okay, so introduction to EPR and its impact. Again, EPR is evolving really quickly. It's a relatively new topic. And so we are having this conversation today just to, again, ground our audience in what it is, why it's important, and then how to ensure you can comply. So next slide, Preston. So what is EPR? So in essence, EPR is, again, it's a regulation or a policy framework that is really helping to shift the responsibility of managing packaging, in this instance, end of life, and paying for the recycling and disposal of that packaging that is typically today by governments and consumers through your waste bills, shifting that upstream to producers who are actually making decisions about the packaging that's going into the market. Why does this matter? Of course, the overall essence and goal of extended producer responsibility is to reduce waste. It also really helps to drive accountability and transparency in supply chains because it's forcing producers or companies that are putting packaging into the market to really understand their packaging supply chain, report on the packaging that they use, and then pay for that packaging to help to fund the recycling systems. And then with that, because there's more funding that's going to those systems, we're able to really improve our recycling capabilities. And producers are incentivized to shift to more recyclable or reusable packaging because that lowers their fees. So that then also really helps to improve the recyclability of packaging, our capabilities to recycle that packaging, and the overall circularity of the packaging supply chain. So again, an exciting time. Regulation can really drive progress. And I really think it's here to stay. Next slide. And one of the biggest reasons for that is it truly is a global trend. As you can see, the blue is where there is EPR legislation in place. So it's all over Europe today, China, Canada, those countries have had EPR for quite some time. And you see all of US lit up in blue here on this map, which is not technically correct. It's happening in the US across different states. It's not a federal legislation, it is state by state. But this is just an indicator to show you the US is really catching up with the rest of the world that has had extended producer responsibility regulations in place for some time. Next slide. So, and this is a slide to just show what, a projected impact, via numbers is of EPR and forecast of how it could work. So the expected impact for 4 states, this is a study that was done by the Recycling Partnership, shows that the recycling rates across 4 states who have passed or are passing EPR legislation will double the recycling rate. So again, that's with that additional funding that's going into the recycling systems themselves and improving the recyclability of packaging. And that doubling of the recycling rate across 4 states increases the entire national recycling rate by 24%. So it really has a huge, huge ripple effect for the entire country. And also, when we want to put that into relatable context, just those 4 states is the equivalent, and the doubling of their recycling rate is the equivalent of eliminating emissions from 1.1 million passenger vehicles. So, right, reducing waste reduces carbon emissions. So that's a lot of cars on the road that we're in essence electrifying by improving the recycling rate in our states. So really exciting potential. Okay, great. So what's new since our last update? Next slide, Preston. Again, we last talked about EPR in July of 2025. And there are still, as of April, 7 states that have fully passed EPR legislation. So those are the states that you see in blue. But then the new additions as of April 2026 are the green states you see here. So under pending. Georgia, New Hampshire, and Wisconsin have been added to that pending list as states that are developing EPR legislation. And we assume all of this, those states will move into this past column as the ripple effect continues. And I was counting the number of states here last night. These are 20 states that have either passed or have pending legislation. So that's 40% of the US is active in EPR today. So again, the momentum is really building. Next slide, Preston. Great. So then, before we get into compliance and all of that, I think it's really important to step back and just think about, well, what are these states trying to do? And overall, right, they're trying to improve the recycling rate of packaging. But as we know, US loves to be independent, and every state is able to really develop and design their own EPR programs and their own goals. So this is a quick visual of the goals by state today for 4 of the states. And you can see the differences. So Oregon and Colorado, they're really focused on overall goals of recycling rate improvement. Oregon specifically looking at improving the recycling rate for plastic packaging. Colorado really thinking about holistic recycling rates for plastic and paper. And then Colorado also really focused on funding 100% of their state's recycling costs. California is really focused on the reduction of plastic packaging, so reducing before they're getting into the recycling effort, and then ensuring 65% of single-use plastic is recycled. And then a really holistic, broad stroke goal of all packaging being either recyclable or compostable. And then Minnesota has a very similar goal, broad stroke goal of all packaging as well being reusable, recyclable, or compostable. So all of the states have kind of a different flavor for what they are aiming to do. And so, of course, this requires producers or companies that are producing packaging or putting packaging into the market to have a packaging portfolio that aligns with these design requirements. So your packaging needs to be recyclable. And states will really achieve these goals by, one, when you start to pay for EPR fees, you'll see higher fees applied to packaging materials that are not easily recycled. Some packaging materials might have restrictions in states or entire phase outs and bans. So that has already happened for, to say this word, I'm going to try to say it correctly, expanded polystyrene. I did it. Foodware, the foam, styrofoam cups, etc., have been banned in California because the state was not able to achieve their recycling goals for that material. It proved to be too difficult, so they banned the material entirely. So again, along with just complying with EPR reporting and fees, these design requirements are really important to understand and to know whether or not your packaging portfolio aligns with them. Okay, next slide. Thanks, Preston. So when we just think about all of the states that are active in EPR today, this is a view of kind of how states are moving through the legislative process. As we mentioned, Georgia, Wisconsin, and New Hampshire are the 3 new states that have proposed legislation. And then Maryland and Washington have kind of moved into the more early implementation phase. And then Oregon and Colorado are the first kind of 2 fully live programs for EPR today, where they're actively, requiring or have deadlines have passed for registration, reporting, and paying fees. So all states will kind of move through this funnel, and we expect that to continue happening at a pretty significant speed. Additional updates to share on the right here. Number 1 is an exciting development in terms of just the ease of compliance. We're starting to see some more harmonization across states, and that's in large part because there's one producer responsibility organization that's really leading most of state EPR programs called the Circular Action Alliance. And they're doing an excellent job in looking to see where they can really drive consistency and harmonization for requirements for companies. So, for example, we're seeing for Oregon, Colorado, and Maine, May 31st due date for packaging data this year. So really trying to align due dates, likely aligning fee or cost projections, and then invoicing dates as well. So I think we'll continue to see some more consistency there because, again, the Circular Action Alliance really has is the umbrella organization driving a lot of these programs. Interestingly, again, each state can still, though, have their own flavor. Colorado has begun a mandatory post-consumer recycled content reporting requirement. That's because they're really focused on post-consumer recycled content for their goals for the state. And then California is really the next state to go live. And so they are in this stage of draft regulations, and those are being reviewed right now. And really, for increased clarity, we're seeing broader scope for those regulations, and also a really positive alignment with the SB 343 law in California, which dictates what you can truly call a recyclable material and whether or not you can have the recycling arrows on that material. So they're really aligning recyclability definitions between the two laws, which of course will make it so much easier for companies. You probably have also heard about some active litigation around EPR, and there is some litigation in Oregon, Colorado, and California right now. We want to highlight that this is a really standard industry response, and it's really healthy because companies are coming forward with their feedback, what works, what doesn't. And what we project is that this will really help to drive balanced regulation and laws that truly work for organizations. So despite that litigation, we've not seen any deadlines change. EPR is just as official and active as it's always been. Okay, next slide, Preston. Here's just a quick pulse on a state-by-state dashboard of deadlines that have passed in red, and then deadlines that are coming up in the near future in green. So I won't read state by state, but again, registration dates are coming for Maine and May, and then in July for Maryland and Washington, and those 3 states that I mentioned who have a harmonized reporting date are coming up in the end of May as a due date for your data. Okay, next slide. Great. So now we'll do a second poll. Preston.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Let's get the second poll. Okay, so you saw that all those deadlines are coming up or have already passed. How are we feeling about your ability to kind of comply or report effectively, efficiently? Do you have the internal resources to complete EPR reporting efficiently? How are we feeling? Okay, a couple no, a couple yes. Only 25% have voted. We really appreciate everyone's participation here. We want to tailor the rest of the content to kind of fit the audience's needs. Okay, more no's. Yeah, it's overwhelming and intimidating, huh?
Yeah, again, very typical response for sure. New regulation, a lot of complexity. So a lot of companies are with you in trying to figure out how to get this done.
Okay, I'm giving it 10 more seconds. Speak now or forever. We will not know if you feel you can comply or not. Okay, thank you. And a reminder to use the question box for any questions. So we have some at the end.
Great. Thanks for sharing. Thanks, Preston. So yes, we'll continue, with what's new. And again, absolutely makes sense to be uncertain about resourcing, et cetera. And we're here to help you kind of walk through that if you need some support. The other exciting update is that eco-modulation discounts are live now for the states that have active EPR programs in place, Oregon and Colorado. So these are incentives that are in addition to you as a company needing to build packaging portfolios that are aligned with those design requirements of the states. These are additional incentives for you to further see further fee reductions if you're able to prove some of these incentive call outs by state. So in Oregon, they are going, again, all of them are different. Oregon is really leaning into the value of life cycle analysis, which is, again, is a holistic environmental study of the impact of your packaging. So you can set a baseline for yourself, what the impact of that packaging is today. And then if you do work to reduce that impact, and whether that be, the type of material you use, the water you use, who your suppliers are, you can conduct another comparative LCA to show those reductions. And Oregon will give credit for just doing that baseline study or and doing additional studies after the fact to show progress. Colorado is giving credit for whether you're able to show on-package sorting instructions. Also, as you saw in the previous slide, they're requiring post-consumer recycled content disclosure because they have a goal, or they're trying to incentivize companies towards really generating and using post-consumer recycled content from Colorado to have that smaller loop in place. So incentives if you're using local post-consumer recycled material. Compostable materials as well. And then even, this is an interesting one, a case study of whether you've tried to use or leverage design an alternative collection program for your packaging. So really different flavors for opportunities here across the states. And again, opportunities to really build this into your packaging strategy to further reduce your fees. Next slide, Preston. Great. So how do you even start? Again, if you do believe you may be an obligated producer, we wanted to touch on how to comply in the next couple of slides. Preston, next slide. So overall, I like to think about if you are a company that uses primary, secondary, or tertiary packaging to ship your product, you're likely an obligated producer. And that's whether you're a B2C company or a B2B company shipping supplies to a manufacturing site, you are likely an obligated producer if you're making decisions about packaging for your product. So that's just a helpful framing I found. And then, of course, there are additional thresholds that are important to be aware of. There's revenue thresholds, which are different by state, typically above $5 million or $1 million of product sold into the state. And then also the volume of packaging matters too, so that smaller producers can be exempt. So typically over 1 ton of packaging that goes into the state will make you qualify as an obligated producer. There are exemptions for small businesses, nonprofits, or specific product categories, but as we've taken a deeper dive into EPR, it's really broader than we initially anticipated, and that's really to account for all of the packaging in the supply chain that then enters into the state. So hopefully these are some helpful considerations for you. Next slide, Preston. Risks of non-compliance. So as we've seen, 40% of the states have active EPR legislation, and they're taking it really seriously. Oregon and Colorado have stated that they actually will restrict you from selling product into those states if you're not compliant, if you haven't registered and reported your packaging. So that is the biggest risk, market access restrictions and your ability to sell and do business in the state. Financial risks as well. If you haven't paid your fees, you will likely need to retroactively pay all of the fees for the prior years. And then Oregon specifically has stated that there will be fines up to $25,000 per day for failing to report on your packaging if you are an obligated producer. And then transparency and reputation. The Circular Action Alliance has already started to report and publish a list of compliant and non-compliant producers public. So again, important to make sure you have clarity in whether you're an obligated producer and really begin this process. It also is a common question, will your data be audited? Yes, it typically will by the Circular Action Alliance as the years go forward. Okay, so the steps toward legal compliance, absolutely possible. And I think, again, the Circular Action Alliance is doing a lot of great work to continue to make this easier for companies. The overall steps that you need to take are, 1, to assess the sales into those active EPR states and to see if you meet those revenue thresholds or volume thresholds. 2, register with the Circular Action Alliance for those states. 3, to gather that data about your packaging in the supply chain, calculate then the volume of packaging by material type and weight by state, and then report that data to the pro. Pay your fees on time, and then this needs to be an annual process. So that question about whether you have internal capabilities and processes to do this is an important one to consider and really plan for, since this will be a cyclical requirement. Next slide. So we wanted to not to get too technical on this call, but some of our clients have had, they may have very clear packaging data in their supply chain, or they may not. So we wanted to just share quickly a couple of the approved kind of methods for calculating your packaging volumes, so you're aware. One is what's called the specific material method. This is the preferred method, and it's really simple. It's basically like the packaging that you use, for being able to report on that specific packaging, its specific weight and material type, and then multiplying that by the number of units that have been sold into the state. So that really specific, exact kind of method that it truly represents the packaging that you use is preferred, of course. But next slide, Preston. Not everyone has that data, or they have really complicated supply chains with a lot of different types of products that require a lot of different types of packaging. So there's another method called the adjusted bill of materials method that is approved, which is an estimation method and really guides you through a grouping process where you can think about products that have similar packaging and then create subgroups of those products, and then do a representative sample of the packaging of that subgroup and physically weigh it. And then you can leverage that representative sample for the sales of that subgroup and find a weighted average for each packaging type. So I think it's very understood and expected that a lot of companies will have to go this route, since specific packaging tracking and that granular data is not readily accessible today. So this is absolutely a path that you can take as you then work towards getting that more specific packaging data process developed. Okay, next slide. Okay, so then we just wanted to highlight, we've worked with several clients over the past year on extended producer responsibility, and we wanted to share some of the challenges that we see and some of the recommendations that we would give this audience to solve those challenges. So next slide. So number one, right, ensuring that you're compliant. So getting clear on your obligation. As we saw, through the poll of this webinar, that's still a very common question, not knowing if you're an obligated producer or not. So really important to do a deeper assessment of your business model and the packaging in your supply chain to see if you should register as an obligated producer. And then there's often not clarity about what packaging, is in your supply chain, or where it's going and who's responsible for that packaging. Where do you get the data? And so what we've really helped or found is helpful, and our clients have found helpful, is developing what we like to call a visual supply chain map, where we really map the packaging based on your supply chain and identify where those nodes are, whether they're in scope or not, and then where that data for that packaging can come from. And that can be really the baseline then of the reporting layer that you add on top of that. It's really getting clear on your obligation, and then your packaging supply chain is a really important step. Then with that data, of course, if you're an obligated producer, please register, please report your packaging so you don't have to face those consequences. And, as we've also polled, a lot of companies don't yet have the capacity internally to do so. So please, find support for that. We can definitely help to support you at 3R. We've done this with a lot of companies to manage that registration process, help you build that internal reporting process, and really also estimate what your fees may be across each state. And then, as we also talked about, this is a cyclical process. So you will have to do this annually. You want to continue refining how you report and streamline that process. So really recommend developing really a centralized packaging, tracking, and reporting process that gets you closer to that specific material method. And of course, also really staying up to date on EPR updates and requirements across the states so that you're proactively planning for their requirements in your portfolio and with your team. Okay, next slide. And as we've talked about too, it's not just about reporting your packaging. This is about supporting the states to achieve the goals and design ambitions that they have set for packaging. And if you are not supporting that, you'll see much higher fees that will only continue to grow as EPR grows across the country. So number one, what we really recommend is doing a packaging audit and assessing the packaging portfolio that you have, that you use for your product, and comparing that with the regulations and the design requirements of each state to see where you may have gaps and where you may have to pay higher fees or may have potential ban limitations or risk. And then with that really baseline assessment, we really recommend thinking about future-proofing your packaging portfolio. So developing a strategy and a roadmap that really helps you to align with those EPR design requirements that are namely really around recyclability. And then also, of course, along with aligning with those design requirements, capturing as much as you can in those EPR modulation opportunities. So of course, you want those to make sense. Select the ones that make sense for your packaging portfolio and your specific business model. But those are absolutely really valuable opportunities for you to not only just reduce your fees, but also, really measure the true impact of your packaging and set a strategy to reduce that impact with life cycle analysis, for example. So those are great opportunities to be aware of, number one, and then fold into your packaging strategy overall. Okay, next slide. Got one more poll, Preston. Great. So just curious for this audience as well, do you have a strategy that really helps you to align your packaging portfolio with those state-by-state design requirements?
Yeah, thanks for teeing that up. Again, looks like a bit of a mix, yes and no.
Yeah.
The clients I've worked with that are getting impacted by these, I think they've found it really challenging for the state by state. It's hard when there's kind of different rules or requirements state by state, and you're selling, nationally. It's
Yeah.
so hard.
Yeah, totally. Which is, why it's really important to take a kind of holistic strategic approach so that you can align with those requirements in a large part and really ensure that those changes make sense for your business model.
Sure.
Right. And, compliance is number one. Focus on that first. And then, as you're able to, and you have the mind space, please think about just your future strategy to reduce those fees and really future-proof your business under these regulations. Awesome.
I'm going to also take a second here to remind everyone to ask your questions. We have a couple, but definitely we'll have time for some more. So please ask any questions in the chat. And we might not get to some of them today if they're super specific, but we'll follow up via email for anything that is requires us to dive in a little more or just really specific to your company. So if we don't answer on the call, we will follow up and answer that. Okay. And the poll, share the results. Seems like a bit of a half and half. more no's than yes. And I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks. So, I mean, that's a wrap. That's what we have to share with you today. I hope you had just found it valuable and regrounding in what EPR is, why it's important, and hope that some of those updates were helpful, and compliance guidance, and again, our recommendations for how to tackle some of the most common challenges that we've seen. Thanks so much for attending today. It's again a pleasure to just share our insights and our support. And again, please, if you feel it would be valuable to have a deeper conversation with us about whether you are or not an obligated producer, we would love to meet with you. So please leverage this QR code or send us an email. I think it's info@3rsustainability.com, right, Preston? And we'd love to chat.
Yeah, info@3R. But I'll leave this up a little bit longer for those of you who are interested in scanning and asking for a complimentary review. Well, I asked some questions. So to get us started, what if I believe I am obligated, but I haven't registered and reported yet?
Yeah, the most important thing is to do that, to start today. Late EPR reports are still being accepted by Oregon and Colorado. And again, I do think that this first year is a bit of a grace period to just ensure everyone really understands or learns whether they're obligated or not, and then builds that process to report as soon as they can. So doing that assessment right now is really important, and then getting your reports in as soon as possible.
Great. We've got a few very specific questions that I think might be best in a follow-up, but one more general one is EPR a tax on consumers? Hot take question.
Hot take question. This is totally a valid question and concern, and likely, yes, in the early years of EPR, companies might have to increase prices for consumers to help to pay for EPR fees. However, higher prices of your product is never what you want to do. And so again, EPR has this eco-modulation incentive, or their design requirements built into the design of the program, so that companies are hopefully starting to shift towards more recyclable materials that then reduce the fees for EPR, which then makes that cost sharing lower with your consumers, and again overall improves, because companies are able to put more money into the system than maybe government or consumers have been able to do in the past. We're really improving that recycling and infrastructure, and thus reducing, excuse me, glad we're almost done, reducing overall cost over time for the entire ecosystem. So we may see a short-term impact. Yes, it's a very valid concern, but really believe in the long term that this will be beneficial for the whole supply chain.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
We have a couple questions that are pretty specific that I want to reach out via email. Let's see, we got one more. You might not be able to answer that, and they say that's okay, but if the packaging material is necessary to meet a federal law, like packaging for food products, will we need to pay fees for EPR? I know it depends state by state, but is there a general answer? Again, you need to look more into it. I think that's okay, but just in case.
Yeah, likely yes. But there are specific exclusions. So again, it really does require a deeper look into what that packaging material type is, and if there's a specific exclusion for that material type, which the states will call out in their EPR legislation detail. So it takes a deeper review there.
Thanks. Let's see if we got any final ones. Do you know if healthcare packaging is generally exempt?
Um, it's generally exempt.
Yeah.
Yes, packaging for medical devices, et cetera, is generally exempt.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you everyone who did ask some questions and participated today. We'll be following up with everyone who requested a review and with everyone who's registered for the recording and some resources as well. So thank you again for joining, and thank you, Fraser, for presenting. Again, if you have any specific questions later on, you know how to reach us. And thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for spending time with us, and wish you all a great day and good luck with EPR. Happy to support you if needed.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Oh, and I'll mention we'll have a little survey that'll go out after this to all attendees. So would really appreciate your insights there. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.